So my take 5 is on being a vegan in the Jewish community, vegan as vegetarian, and specifically the Orthodox world. My vegetarianism, veganism began in college, and it wasn't for Jewish reasons. I looked into it because the woman I was dating at the time was a vegetarian, and you might know her name. And it was something that, like, wow, that's really, like, she's really passionate about it, and I want to know more about it. And so I started looking in different resources of what it was about, things like that, and started looking at it as something that actually seemed to connect and speak to me. And as I was pursuing this path and started getting really into vegetarianism, at this same time, I was really getting into the Jewish community in Santa Barbara. I, 1 year, was president of the Santa Barbara Hillel, involved in Chabad, involved in JAM, which is the Jewish Awareness Movement. It's basically Aish on campus, and involved in the little bit of conservative movement that we had there. And we're just kind of like bouncing around the Jewish life. And as my diet was changing, and we'd go over to Chabad for Shabbat dinners or lunch, or we'd go over to JAM, and we'd let them know, oh, we're vegetarian, we do this. And a number of times, especially with one particular family, we were encountering resistance. And it wasn't just a friendly, like, oh, you're vegetarian, why? Or like, how come? Like, what are the reasons? This is something that, you know, is interesting to us. It was accusative. It was, we're not properly observing the mitzvah of Shabbat because we're not eating meat. It was saying that we weren't Jewish enough. We weren't being good Jews because we weren't eating meat. And that, in and of itself, was bad enough. Just getting and feeling that opposition, especially from a community that was so, we thought, welcoming and warm and wonderful and like open. And in Santa Barbara, if you've ever been to Santa Barbara, California, it's very laid-back community. I mean, like, the Chabad and the Hillel, if the Hillel's led by a Reform rabbi, Chabad is still involved, and everyone really talks and works together. So this was a really big shock. The bigger shock was the arena that these objections were presented at, which was Shabbat dinner with guests. So it would be the family or the host, you know, Rabbi Rabbitson, with our fellow classmates and our students. And in this setting, we were attacked. We were not just, oh, that's really interesting, you know, here's some Jewish stuff about it, or, oh, here's a Judean essay about it. It was very much a feeling of, you know, it says you're supposed to eat meat. And we'd say, well, you know, we don't believe that way. And we bring up, like, the first classical defense is Bereshit, creation. What's the diet in creation? We've all learned it for weeks now, at least most of us. Vegetarian diet. Well, then Noah was commanded. He could eat meat, and he was rewarded. So you're laughing in the face of Noah. You're basically saying that what he did was not right, and just this back and forth that it didn't matter what we say. He had a response for us, for a Jewish reason why we were violating something. And this, I could have gone two ways with this. Could have gone, all right, well, piss on this. I'm not gonna deal with this. This whole religious Jewish community thing is not welcoming. It's not open for me, and I'm done with this. And I could have fled, and I could have left. But instead, because of either my parents instilling in me a love of Judaism or the community we were in, it empowered me to really go, all right, this is my challenge. I'm going to find it now. I'm going to find the Jewish sources. I'm going to look at the text. I'm going to discover what's Jewish about being a vegetarian and have something to kind of fight back with. Eventually, the fighting stopped. One Shabbat, he said, does this make you uncomfortable? We went, yeah, kind of. So he stopped, and the objections kind of quieted down, but in my mind, I still had this, like, this group of people think I'm not being a good Jew, but I know I'm being a good Jew, so how do I push the two? And it helped me to really learn a lot more about myself and about what this ideology that I was following was, and what Judaism was really all about for me. and looking and seeing the different aspects and seeing where they would think that I'm not observing Shabbat properly, and looking at those texts that say you're supposed to eat meat on Shabbat, you're supposed to have meat and wine on Shabbat because that's being joyous. And I looked at that and went, I understand it. I understand where he was coming from. It says to eat meat and wine on Shabbat, and that's what it says. But what it really says is you're supposed to be joyous, eat meat and wine. Well, what's that represent? And for me, how I took it and how a lot of people that I've read take it is it represents going all out. This was not in a world where you could go get a hamburger for $1. This was not in a world where you could get $2 chuck on a shelf somewhere. This was something where meat and wine were very expensive things and rare. You didn't eat very often. So for me, I said, all right, so if I'm going to get the highest quality fruits and veggies now. I'm going to get, not the brand name quinoa. I'm going to get the stuff that's like a step higher. I'm going to get the tofu that's a little bit higher. I'm going to go out and get the nicer wines. I'm going to really put it all to observe and celebrate Shabbat. And it just led me on this path of looking at Judaism and looking at vegetarianism and veganism and trying to see where their conflicts were, and there are. Being a vegan, I don't wear animal products. I don't use any animal products. My shampoos and soaps all have a nice little bunny on them. Yet I wrap tefillin every single morning. It's made from leather. I read and celebrate the Torah scroll. And I see these conflicts, and it's okay. Something that I know all of us kind of deal with in our lives is this idea of we believe Judaism, and then we have this other ideologies that may come from outside of Judaism, and we don't quite know what to do with it. We either see Judaism as flawed or the outside ideology as flawed. And what we should do, and what I've done, and trying to kind of show, is that you can see the beauty in both systems, in both ways of life and thinking of things, and seeing how Judaism completely contradicts things that veganism says, and vice versa. But there's some really neat, harmonious things going on in there. And the conflicts and the contradictions are also beautiful. They're really something to look at and going, wow, I really got a deeper understanding of it. And I would suggest for everybody, like, what to take away from my little story is that there are many times where we're going to encounter things that we don't like in Judaism, in the outside world, that conflict with one of the two. And we have a choice. The choice can be that we can run away and we can flee. We can say, you know what, Judaism says X and I think Y, and Judaism is just full of it. It doesn't work. Or we can reject the outside. We can see the outside doesn't make any sense. What this ideology says doesn't work with Judaism. It has to be completely wrong. And what we should do is look at the two and really meld them, and really see where they interact, and where they separate, where they differ from, and acknowledge that and have that be okay. And that would be the moral of my Take 5.